It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast, IdahoSports.com, breaking down districts 1 and 2 each week in the state of Idaho. My name is Brandon Baney, joined by Ryan Scaggs, wearing his finest Seattle Mariners hat because the postseason drought is over.
It's over, baby. Finally, since my junior year of high school, I can say there is postseason baseball in the Pacific Northwest.
Man,
good things feel, and I was like, man, I was looking back at it, and I'm like, I'm so flipping mad that like they couldn't have signed Felix to like a one-day contract and held him on a DL all season or something like that, just to let him throw the first batter. That's it, and then they could pull him. I don't care, but like just give him one pitch in the postseason because they owe him that much. But that's just me and being nostalgic.
Right. I will say that, and again, we're just getting a little baseball talk out of the way here first, and then we'll dive into North Idaho sports, I promise. I believe they're going to play the Toronto Blue Jays in the first round, right? Are all three of it's a 3-game series. Are all three of those in Toronto?
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, it sucks.
Okay.
Yep. I'm not stoked about that. And Robbie Ray is not going to be able to pitch. So yeah, that's a bummer. His choice too. I'm okay with that. I just don't agree with the rules more than I don't agree with the decisions. So
yes,
yeah,
it definitely stacks it towards. As a Red Sox fan, I ran into that all season long. So I know.
However, that pitching staff's so good. I don't know if it really matters. Got to be honest. I like Logan Gilbert. I mean, they're youngsters on their staff. Kirby, they're flipping studs. I don't think they have any issues in pitching.
Yeah, Luis Castillo just got signed to that huge contract extension for sure.
Dude got paid.
Yeah, he earned it for sure.
Yeah,
I think I'm a Boston Red Sox fan. They're nowhere near the playoffs, obviously. I think I'm gonna hop on the Mariners bandwagon. Both of my brothers are diehard Mariner fans. Growing up in Missoula, Montana, we went every summer to Safeco Field. I've been to probably 20 Mariners games in my lifetime. So I'm all aboard that Seattle train, baby. And if the Mariners get out of the first round and get to host a game at T-Mobile Park, they've got to bring King Felix to throw out the first pitch before that.
Absolutely. It would be like, and then have Griffey catching it or Ichiro or somebody. Like, it's just, it's been a long exercise in futility for a long time. And it's finally good to see some postseason baseball. So now that we got that out of the way, we can talk whatever else we want to talk.
Definitely. All right. So from postseason baseball, and if you want to see Ryan's Mariners hat, because it's the old logo with the little
trident, baby. Fear the Fork.
Yeah. That's and there's our podcast title, Fear the Fork. Hold on, let me write that down. Okay, so if you want to see Ryan's hat, you can watch the video version of this at IdahoSports.com's YouTube channel or Facebook page, audio only as well at IdahoSports.com and wherever you download your podcasts. All right, the postseason is upon us. We're talking postseason baseball in the big leagues, but here in the state of Idaho, our first championship events of the fall coming up this weekend, state golf. It's going to be the 5A, 4A competitions Friday and Saturday. 5A golfers will be in Rexburg, 4A golfers in Idaho Falls. I checked the weather, Ryan. Mostly sunny, couple of clouds here and there, high of 75. Sounds like perfect weather for golfing.
Fall golf, like with those temperatures, are you kidding me? You don't really get that lucky, and that's amazing. And I was thinking, I'm like, man, it looks great down there, but I was like, man, they really missed the boat on playing fall golf up here in North Idaho. But that's just me personally, like thinking that, I mean, the weather's insane up here right now. It's been like high 70s all week, and it's supposed to continue, and I'm digging it. It's gonna make elk hunting interesting, but that's another. We don't do a hunting podcast, so
that's right. Not yet. If somebody wants to sponsor that, that's the big thing, is we're kind of at our cap of what we can cover unless somebody steps up and says, hey, I'll pay you money to do this. So
yeah,
if you're a sponsor out there and you want to see more cool content, send Logan at IdahoSports.com an email. That's our sales manager, Logan at IdahoSports.com. But seriously, without our advertisers, we're not able to do what we do. We like to say, what we produce is free, right? Our games are free to watch. The articles that we write. I just wrote a huge article, Ryan, about.
I read it. The bubbles. I love it. That was awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's some serious effort on your part too, by the way. So kudos to you for doing that. That's not easy to track it down for all six classifications.
Yeah, I wrote a huge article about who's on the bubble, basically from 5A all the way down to 1A D2 in football. Like if the playoffs ended today, who would be in? Where would they be seated? What would the matchups be? There were some really intriguing like opening round matchups across the board, and we'll talk about that.
Shelley Sandpoint, I like that in the 4A. That's a dandy of a game. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, Shelley Sandpoint, Burley Emmett in the 9-8, first team to 60 wins. Yeah, there was
basketball on grass. Yeah,
for sure. There were some interesting battles, and we'll talk more about that in the football. But okay, so you go anywhere else, there's going to be a paywall where, hey, if you want to read this, buy a monthly subscription. We don't do that. It's all free content, but producing all of this content is not free, and that's where our advertisers come in. So roundabout way of saying thank you to all of our great advertisers. And if you want to help out and see us do even more cool things, send Logan at IdahoSports.com an email.
Especially for wrestling season.
Yes.
Yeah, because we want to do some more of that stuff this winter for sure.
Definitely. We've got some plans in the hopper, as they say, for high school wrestling. Okay. Postseason golf we talked about. Postseason soccer is fast approaching as well, Ryan, where district tournament play will start this week. Over in East Idaho, district tournament play already started on Monday, believe it or not. I wasn't quite ready for that, but that's another cool thing we give you free of charge on IdahoSports.com. All the district brackets for not just soccer, but volleyball and then basketball and further on down the line, but it's every district around the state of Idaho. So fans up north certainly will want to follow how their bracket's going, but you also want to see, okay, who else is getting to state? Well, you can check every other district in the state of Idaho. We update those brackets every night with the latest scores and matchups. That's right on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. So what I'm going to do is we can break down the 5A and 4A brackets for boys and girls soccer. 3A IML, we still have to wait. There's still some regular season matches and the standings are a little chaotic.
But do we really have to break down girls 3A soccer? Come on, Coeur d'Alene Charter.
Somebody else is going to get to state, right?
That's true.
Somebody else that fight for the other slot is going to be fantastic, I think, and for sure. So we'll talk 3A soccer next week when some matchups will already have taken place, but let's check in on these brackets. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. So those of you that are watching the video version of this Prepcast, you'll be able to see the brackets up on the screen. I recommend you make your screen full size so it's easier to read the bracket. If you're listening audio only, you can follow along with our district brackets at IdahoSports.com. Let's start on the girls' side and let's go to 5A first. 5A Inland Empire League, districts 1 and 2. The number 1 seed goes to Lake City, the defending 5A state champs, again, that nobody talks about ever. They're like the quietest repeating champ like ever. Lake City 1, Coeur d'Alene is the 2 seed, Lewiston the 3 seed, Post Falls is number 4. So your matchups on Saturday: Post Falls at Lake City at noon, Lewiston at Coeur d'Alene also at noon.
I still like the T-Wolves. I really do. I think that out of that bracket, it's an intriguing matchup if you get into that Coeur d'Alene plays tough. But it's Lake City at the end of the day. I think they just kind of, I don't want to say run away with it, but we haven't really seen anybody step up to the plate and necessarily stop them all season. So I don't see that continuing, or I don't see that stopping now.
Yeah, the winning streak did finally come to an end for Lake City, right? They lost to Sandpoint 1-0 last night, actually.
Yeah.
So,
and we talk about, obviously, with what they're able to do. I think they're prepped, ready for that state run. I don't necessarily know if they put a ton of I don't want to say energy into last night's game against Sandpoint, but Sandpoint's a good team too, and I think that's kind of proving what I said a couple weeks ago about have we seen the best from the Sandpoint girls soccer team yet? And I want to say there's a little bit of an axe to grind with what happened last year, but we'll talk about 4A soccer obviously in a minute. But with Lake City, I think that losing that game, that's almost like, I don't want to say getting a monkey off your back, but I don't really think that derails what they were planning on doing or what they were, focused on by any stretch. And I think, what they did in their 5A schedule, I don't see that, the game last night messing with that at all. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents, but
definitely. Yeah. The T-Wolves 12-1 overall, 8-1 in the combined 5A, 4A Inland Empire League with that quote unquote league loss to Sandpoint last night. But they're so far ahead. Coeur d'Alene gets the 2 seed. They went 5-3-1. Lewiston went 5-4. So what it came down to was Coeur d'Alene was able to earn a tie against Sandpoint 1-1 in the game that counted in the conference standings. Coeur d'Alene also lost to Sandpoint in the last 10 days, 1-0. So and we'll talk about Sandpoint in a second, but Sandpoint looking very good, obviously. That's what it came down to. Coeur d'Alene tied against Sandpoint, back in the middle of September. And because of that gave them second place over Lewiston, who went 5-4. But that's, flip a coin, I think.
Yeah, and I'll have to ask too about Lake City in that game last night about if they played all of their starters for the majority of the game, because I have a couple parents that have kids in my son's grade, so I'll have to ask and inquire a little bit more information on that one, because they could have just been resting people too, but I don't want to quote that as like slighting Sandpoint at all, because Lake City is a good program anyways. So, I mean, that's a good victory for the Bulldogs.
Definitely. So yeah, we like Lake City. This first round matchup between Coeur d'Alene and Lewiston is going to be really intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
They split in the regular season. Sandpoint won the first matchup all the way back in August, 1-0. Coeur d'Alene won in the middle of September, 2-0. It's even Steven, but I think whoever wins that matchup obviously has a good chance to get to state. The way it works this year is the district champion will automatically go. Second place will have to play the 5th place team from District 3 in a state play-in match in Lewiston. So that could be a home match for the Bengals if they get there. But I think whoever does, Coeur d'Alene or Lewiston, I think has a good chance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, that's a good chance for the opportunity for District 1 too, to maybe get 2 teams to place the state too. Cause I think that, there's a little bit of sliding going on with the quality of the programs outside of Lake City. And even with Lake City, I think being a defending state champ, I don't know, I've never really seen somebody get so little press or notoriety statewide with being a repeat state champion. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, but I think that that kind of adds some fuel to the fire. If they want to, make any noise at all at state, they can say, nobody was paying attention to us. Nobody gave us respect. We did it last year. We're going to go ahead and run this one back again and repeat.
Definitely. I can't believe the lack of respect almost that Lake City is getting statewide. It just continues to boggle the mind for sure. So that's the 5A bracket. 4A.
Did you say boggle the mind? I'm just kidding. That's an Anchorman reference, but go ahead.
People wonder why these, we set a goal of half an hour every week. People wonder why we go 40, 45 minutes on these.
Dropping movie references. Sorry.
Mariners baseball, movie references, hunting.
It bottles the mind. Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, back here in the glass case of emotion, let's talk about emotions were high for Sandpoint last year in girls soccer because they were the overwhelming favorite. They end up losing in the district title match against Moscow, in an all-time classic performance from the Bears. And for Sandpoint, they went 8-4-2 in the regular season, 6-1-1 in this combined 5A, 4A Inland Empire League. It is their tournament to lose again. When you look at the overall record, Moscow went 8-5-1, but in league play, they were 4-4. So to me, there's still a gap between Sandpoint at 1, Moscow at 2. But again, it's going to come down to one match because they get one bid to state, and that's it.
Yeah. And, I like the Bulldogs. I don't know if they're going to get caught off guard like they did last year a little bit. I don't want to say anybody coasts, but I just saw what took place last year is, one of those, it's almost like you look at the NCAA basketball tournament and you look at like the league championship games that happen to seed the automatic bids in some of those other conferences. And every once in a while, you'll see like a heavy favorite just get surprised. And I want to say Sandpoint got surprised a little bit last year. I don't know if it happens 2 years in a row. This Bulldog team's loaded. There is a ton of talent, ton of speed on the field. And they're stingy on defense too. They defend really well on the pitch. So I like this Bulldog team. I look at them coming out of the bracket. I don't think Moscow can do it 2 years in a row, but if they've got any motivation, I mean, it's no better than this week after, losing your athletic director last week, that there could be some motivation from that Bear team, for coming up victorious. I mean, it'd be kind of cool to, if there's like a win one for the Gipper type moment, like this might be it.
Definitely. And so, yes, Moscow, the 2 seed, will host Lakeland next Tuesday, October 11th at 3:30 p.m. In a loser out game, essentially first round game. Moscow has a really great coach in Jessica Brown. And in the 2 matchups this year, Sandpoint won both, but they were by scores of 2-1 and 1-0. So, I mean, it is tight between these 2 teams, certainly. So, Sandpoint Moscow round 3 should be appointment viewing. And so, Ryan, you mentioned this, and I'll stop sharing my screen for a second, and then we'll look at the boys soccer brackets. This was something I was going to bring up at the end, but you're right. This is, I think, the biggest story that happened up north last week was the really tragic passing of Moscow, former Moscow student athlete, and now
lifelong resident.
I mean, when you think of the Moscow Bears, I mean, you think of Lance Abendroth, the athletic director, who had a long battle with cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like so many cancer battles go, fought it off for as long as he could, and he's in his early 50s and tragically passes away last Thursday. It really shocked everyone, not just in Moscow, but up north and really statewide.
Yeah. I mean, I know Lance, and I've known him for quite some years. I mean, just going back from my days of coaching at Pullman, have gotten to know him and had numerous conversations with him, whether it's at like tennis matches or district tournaments or whatever, but or even after football games, and just a great guy. I mean, really somebody that genuinely loved his school. He loved the Moscow community, but was a huge advocate for the kids. And that's a big loss because he's just a good guy. I mean, that I found out on the air during our game on Friday about that, and it was like kind of like a gut punch because it really took the sales out of our broadcast. But like, it's not about us, but it's more about like praying for his family, because that's just he's got a couple young boys, and they're in, I think, 19 and 18, and his wife, they've been married for 21 years. But just that's a huge loss. I mean, Lance is a great person, and he will be missed for sure.
Yeah, cancer sucks. I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's terrible to see somebody robbed so early in their life of this terrible disease. Yeah, I think a lot of people maybe in the Moscow community kind of knew, but I think statewide we kind of first heard about it because we were broadcasting the Moscow Lewiston game on IdahoSports.com last week, and prior to the game they had a quick moment of silence and all of that, and I think that's when everybody started to go, wow, okay, this happened. And so really sad deal. Our thoughts and prayers are certainly with the Abendroth family. I got to watch Barrett play basketball, last couple of seasons. He's a fun player to watch. Like you said, young kids, and the Moscow community as well are certainly at the forefront of our minds. So
and if one thing, the one community that's there, I think that they will rally around the family for sure, which is good to see. They've got a great tight knit community in Moscow, and people knew that Lance was sick there, and it I'm glad he's free of his disease now, and he's able to, he's on the other side looking down, but it's a nasty thing that people have to go through at times. And cancer sucks, man. It sucks. And I feel, and my thoughts and prayers are with the Abendroth family and with the Moscow community.
Certainly. So yeah, you mentioned it. Now he's looking down and would love to look down at another district championship win from that girls soccer team against Sandpoint.
Yeah. There's a lot of motivation, I think, for the rest of the year for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. Let's keep with Moscow. Let's get back to our district soccer brackets. Let's look at the boys district 1 and 2 bracket. It's the exact same. Sandpoint, the 1 seed, Moscow, the 2 seed, will host Lakeland on Monday, October 10th at 3:30 p.m.
If I look at the probability of upsets, I think it's going to be on this boys side. I think the Moscow boys could be primed to maybe catch Sandpoint. I know that they've played close during the season, against respective opponents. And, if anything, I think that I don't want to say that Moscow pulls what they did on the girls' side last year, but if it happens this year on the boys' side, it doesn't surprise me one bit. I think Sandpoint's a great team. Obviously, we know what they can do, and but I there's some athleticism on that Moscow team too that there could be. I don't want to say catch, and I know that Lakeland's going to be like not so fast. Maybe we're the ones that catch Moscow, but you know, if Sandpoint comes out on both sides victorious on the boys and the girls bracket, you know, that's not going to shock anybody because they're both great programs. But I think that there's a little bit of you know, you're seeing an upward climb, you know, with what's gone on the last few years, that I know that there's some talent that has entered the program. So if that happens, I mean, I don't think the Bears are going to shock anybody, but yeah.
See, and I'm going to give the kiss of death that I gave to the Sandpoint girls last year. I'm going to give it to the Sandpoint boys. To me, they are so good.
They are really good. Don't get me wrong, but that Moscow team, there's talent there. They're young, but there's talent there for sure.
Yeah, I mean they didn't lose in Inland Empire League play this year, 5A or 4A. They had a couple draws. You know, they drew with Coeur d'Alene twice. They drew with Lake City. In terms of actual losses, they didn't have it on the docket.
I'm taking the safe route because I don't want to give anybody a kiss of death. Like we said the same exact thing about the Sandpoint girls last year, and man, it was like throwing poo in our face. So we're not going to have that situation. I'm at least going to take the safe route, and be diplomatic about it.
Sounds good. I'll lead in the other way. Tanner French, really great coach. As we said,
really stinking good.
They went unbeaten in regular season play. That they had 3 ties, but otherwise they didn't lose. And you know, anything can happen, certainly. But I really, really like this Sandpoint team.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm trying to not be so much of a
And you know, Lakeland had a really rough season in boys and girls soccer. It's high school athletics, right? They're really good in football and volleyball, you know, and volleyball especially, like way ahead of the pack. And so it's really hard to be good at every sport when you're a 4A school like Lakeland. You know, somewhere, you know, some programs will dip while others rise, and I think that's what we're seeing at Lakeland is really strong football and volleyball.
When you look at, school size too, it's that you're not going to be dominant in every sport just because of enrollment. I mean, you're limited on where you're going to find success, I think, in times just because there's only X amount of athletes in the school. So, yeah, I mean, we're seeing Lakeland with massive success in volleyball and football this year. And, you know, Sandpoint's, I don't know, they're a bigger 4A school, so I think there's a little bit more of cream rising to the top that you can see kind of spread out through their programs. That soccer, they're really good. Football, they're really good. You know, so there's spread a little bit, I think, in that aspect, just because there is about 250 more kids in the school compared to Lakeland. So yeah.
Yep, definitely something to consider. All right, let's take a look at the 5A bracket. District 1-2. Coeur d'Alene gets the 1 seed, Lake City the 2, Post Falls is 3, and Lewiston is 4. So Saturday, 2 p.m. at Coeur d'Alene, Lewiston takes on the Vikings. Saturday, 2 p.m., Post Falls takes on Lake City. So really, you know, Lake City and Coeur d'Alene are going to host girls, boys district tournament doubleheaders on Saturday at 12 and 2. Kind of a cool deal.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then, gosh, I mean, it's postseason time. I don't want to say it's going to go chalk. I wouldn't be surprised if Lake City wins the district title here. I really wouldn't. And that's not me prognosticating. I'm just looking at talent for both programs. They're both really good. I think both teams make it to state between Coeur d'Alene and Lake City. I look at both of those programs and I think that there's a realistic chance that they both place too. Just they play quality soccer, but yeah, I like the play-in opportunity for that number 2 seed out of this district. I really do. And I mean, it's going to be a good opportunity for either program. I definitely don't see it being a detriment if you lose in that title game. It'd obviously be nice to not have to play a play-in game. But I think that the opportunity presents itself pretty well for both programs.
Yeah, very even, Steven. The 2 sides split with each other in the regular season. The first matchup went to Coeur d'Alene. They won 3-2 on September 20th. Actually, sorry, the first matchup went to Lake City on August 27th. They won, or Coeur d'Alene won 4-1, and then Lake City got the rematch 3-2. So pretty even, and I agree. No matter what order or finish, I think both have a good chance of getting to state. But you definitely want that You definitely want that auto bid if you can get
Yeah,
it.
you want the guarantee, that's for sure, of being there. But obviously, there's no guarantees if you play a play-in game. But I mean, I like the chances against the number 5 seed out of the Boise area.
There's no guarantee on the box. You know what movie that's from?
I don't.
That's from Tommy Boy when they're trying to sell brake pads to
Oh,
the,
yeah, no.
the old guy.
You take the butcher's word for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I could take a crap in this box and slap a safety label on it. And anyways, all right, let's get back on track here.
Get a good look at a T-bone steak.
We'll leave it at that because this is a
That's
PG.
right. Now we're going to talk football.
This is a PG. Here we are, 25 minutes in. Are you ready to talk football, Ryan?
I've been ready since minute 1. But yeah, go ahead because man,
Let's do it.
I'm stoked about this game on Friday. I'm stoked about it.
Hey, we finally have Inland Empire League battles. Finally, Lewiston, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Lake City are all going to play each other. I assume you want to start with the Lewiston Post Falls matchup. That seems to be the more compelling of the two.
Lewiston's dang good. And I was talking to a couple of the Sandpoint coaches when they were up at Lake City that were in the booth with me on Friday. And I was like, what'd you see from Lewiston? Like, oh, it's just a typical Sandpoint Lewiston game. They all seem to go the same way. It's a, 1 or 2 point game, no matter what we do. And it usually trades off year to year. But he said the thing that really everybody looks at, like, the quarterback play and James White and some of the other, the running back play from Lewiston. But they said the thing that just jumped off in watching their film against Lewiston was Jared Jelinek. It's somebody that you have to account for. And he's not necessarily going to get the bright lights and notoriety all the time, but he's that dude that they go to when, if they need like a tough, 5-6 yards, he gets lost. They can't find him in the passing pattern. Boom, he's wide open. And, so I look at players like that and the team. We obviously saw Post Falls' Achilles heel against Lakeland was stopping the run. They're great in the pass. I think Sandpoint's secondary is really good. Their linebacker core with Cole Cripps and who they've got in linebacker. They got great linebacker play. They've got Trevor Miller at D end. Rushing in the passing game, I give the edge defensively to Post Falls. If we're looking running game, though, I'm giving the edge to Lewiston. That offensive line is monstrous. They're nasty, and they can move the ball up front. I think if Lewiston goes run heavy in this offense with Hottinger and whoever else they want to decide to throw in the backfield, if it's James White or whatever, that they kind of move guys around, I'm taking the Bengals. I think that, and it could be the Bengals big if Post Falls is not careful.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting first domino because we all agree, right? Lewiston, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, all really good, all worthy of inclusion into the playoffs. And yet we saw this movie last year where they all beat each other and Post Falls ultimately didn't make it into the playoffs because there's only 2 at-large bids, and it comes down to your winning percentage against other 5A opponents. These are important must-win games, right?
Yeah, and Lewiston's already got a win, obviously, over Capital. So, I mean, that's something they're holding in their hip pocket if it comes down to an at-large bid. I think that, they'll get seeded pretty well, obviously, with an at-large if they don't beat Coeur d'Alene in what could be the champion. I don't know. I'm looking really far ahead, but I like the Bengals a lot this year. As good as they were last year, I think they're more balanced this year. And we're seeing that. Post Falls, it's going to be interesting because they cannot start the game like they did against Lakeland, to where they're having 3 and outs with a no huddle offense and they're only using 30 seconds of clock. That just doesn't work if you're not able to get the ball moving up the field and you're turning the ball over essentially in under a minute. You're going to look at a long night, especially Bengals. They control the ball really well on offense. That you could be looking at a blowout really easily. I mean, that's realistic if you can't punch it in the end zone.
Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic battle for sure. This is a game that we'll have for you on IdahoSports.com, live from Post Falls as Lewiston takes on the Trojans. Coeur d'Alene will play Lake City in their annual Crosstown Showdown. This will be a Saturday contest, kicking off 1 o'clock on Saturday. That'll be an interesting battle as well. Yeah, when you look at these 3 teams and 2 will get automatic bids to the playoffs. 1 will have to fight for an at-large bid. Coeur d'Alene is in the toughest boat right now if it came down to it, because they look at your record against 5A opponents and non-Idaho schools with 5A enrollments. Post Falls is actually in the best position. They're 4-1 in those games. All those wins they've gotten over those Washington schools, and then they beat Timberline from Boise earlier this year. They've bankrolled a 4-1 record. Lewiston is 2-1, right? They beat Pendleton, Oregon. They lost at the Rocky Mountain Rumble to a Utah school, and then they beat Capital, like you said. Coeur d'Alene is 1-3.
Yeah.
With
that scheduling up didn't do them a ton of favors. I mean, yeah, it does make you battle tested, but losing to Rigby, Rocky, I mean, that's a murderer's row when they started the season.
Yes, and so that really could put Coeur d'Alene in trouble, where I hate that teams are getting penalized for scheduling tough. That's a crappy way to go about it. But again, this is where I talk about, Coeur d'Alene was able to play Sandpoint and Lakeland and get good competition, but it doesn't mean anything for them. I think the 5A, 4A stuff's got to go away.
I think we will see it in the future. I think we absolutely see it start to go the way of the dodo for sure.
Because I'm tired of good teams from the north losing out on playoff spots to mediocre teams from Boise because they all play each other. Yeah. We saw it last year with Post Falls. They should have been in the playoffs. I hate it. I hate seeing that because I want the best teams in the playoffs, period.
Yeah, absolutely. Coeur d'Alene, there is a lot of pressure there. They they can't have a hiccup like they did last year losing to Post Falls. They can't afford it. I really look at this and it's like, if they end up giving up a game to the Trojans with their non-league schedule, the way they schedule their games, Coeur d'Alene's got a tough road to hoe if they're going to hope for an at-large bid, just with what they had non-conference schedule-wise. It's really stacked against the Vikings. It really is.
Definitely. All right, the game of the week, I think, in probably the entire state. I'd be willing to say it's
this is a dandy.
The best game in the state. This is the game that you're going to be at Friday night, Ryan, for another edition of North Idaho Game Night. We got two gems of a game for you up north. This is the Sandpoint Bulldogs at the Lakeland Hawks. Winner will, let's be honest, will win the Inland Empire League and get a top 5 seed into the playoffs, and probably home game at least through the quarterfinal round.
Yeah, and Brandon Fury and I were talking about that. He's my color commentator with me, and we were talking about kind of towards the end of the broadcast, looking at Sandpoint. It was actually my first look at Sandpoint this year, other than what I'd seen on game film. Seeing them live, they're more balanced this year than they were last year. They relied a lot last year, obviously, on Garrett Cox, but rightfully so. I mean, the dude was a freak show of an athlete and a great player. And Parker Pettit. They had 8 guys rush the ball, tote the ball for significant carries on Friday night. They spread the wealth. Max Frank had, 4 touchdowns in the game. Seems like every week a different role player kind of shows up. I mean, maybe it's the arm of Parker Pettit when he beats Homedale, and then we saw the legs of Max Frank, and even in the passing game, he had a couple of receiving touchdowns too. It was an impressive showing, and Lake City showed up tough. I mean, for 2.5 quarters, they played Sandpoint really well. They did expose Sandpoint a little bit, in my mind, defensively up front against the run. Lake City ran the ball very effectively against Sandpoint, which if you look at what Lakeland does, that's the one thing Sandpoint did, though, is they didn't turn the ball over this last week, and they did have some drops, obviously, on offense a few times in key positions, but they were able to get turnovers. So the battle's going to be, what can Lakeland do with their possessions running the ball? Can Sandpoint get a takeaway or not from Lakeland? That game, it's going to be a one-possession game, and I think it comes down to the last possession of that ball game on Friday night.
It's going to be a great battle. One thing I'll point out when you mentioned Sandpoint struggled against Lake City's run, because it was Zach Johnson running the ball.
Whitehead had a great game too.
Okay,
yeah, Whitehead approached the century mark rushing as well. So it wasn't just Zach Johnson. I mean, and he's a stud. Don't get me wrong, but Whitehead was a very effective runner against Sandpoint.
All right, I'll rescind my earlier objection. Objection overruled.
So the X factor, and I say it right now, and it's a weapon to have in high school football, and it's starting to become, I don't want to say rarity, but the X factor in the game is the leg of Owen Forsman for Lakeland. That will decide the game. I think it's going to be like I'm going to say like a weird score, like 19-17 or 19-16. Somebody's going to have to get a 2-point conversion late in order to clinch it, or you're going to see a field goal to win it from like 38 to 45 yards. This has the markings of a absolute running slobber. We could be done. The game could be over before 9:00. Let's put it that way.
Hey, that'd be all right.
We
Nothing
saw
wrong
the
with
first,
that.
I kid you not, the first half on Friday night, Lake City and Sandpoint, 46 minutes. The first half only took 46 minutes.
Wow.
We had a 26-minute halftime.
Really puts a crimp in things.
Yeah, we would have been done before 9:00 if it wasn't for homecoming.
Stupid homecoming. Of course we're kidding. Yes, this is obviously the game of the week. Sandpoint, Lakeland, big ramifications. Both teams will make the playoffs, but whoever loses may get a home playoff game, and then we'll have to hit the road. So it's going to be, this is for all the marbles. If we move our way down 3A, Bonners Ferry kind of chilling, hanging out 6-0. We'll find out.
What do you got to do, man? What do you have to do?
Well, we'll find out this week, because Bonners Ferry plays Kellogg in a non-conference battle, and we know Kellogg's good. So, that'll tell us a lot about Bonners Ferry. The more intriguing game to me, though, in the 3A, 2A ranks is St. Mary's is going to take on Grangeville. Now, this year, District 1 and 2, the Central Idaho League, gets 2 automatic bids to the playoffs. And if we're really looking at it, that's probably all they're going to get. I don't think they're going to get an at-large bid. So this game between St. Mary's and Grangeville, to me, is kind of a de facto playoff game. Like, we know Kellogg's good. We think they're going to get a spot. Who gets the second spot? Is it, and doesn't it always seem to come down to Grangeville and St. Mary's? That's how it's always been in years past. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, so they wanted to say, like, hey, I know that everybody came down to join in the party this year when you saw Priest River and Kellogg drop, but Grangeville's like, hey, we've been here. This is kind of our thing that we've run. St. Mary's has had their runs a few times too, but every year, like we said, it's usually you can death taxes and expect to see St. Mary's or Grangeville in the play, with a bid for the for the chance to go to the playoffs. I like the Bulldogs a lot this year. I think they're pretty darn balanced. But I mean, St. Mary's plays some stingy defense. It wouldn't surprise me to see things kind of swing and you see an oopsie game, but I definitely don't think that Grangeville goes in there and lays an egg. And I like the Bulldogs taking that game. I think it's, I don't want to say kind of run its course, but Grangeville's a solid team.
Definitely. 8-man football, White Pine League, 1A D1, Kamei. Oh,
I told you.
You did tell me. The Cubs take over sole possession in first place, 52-0 shutout win over Prairie. David Clute, 10 of 12 passing, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a pair of touchdown runs. Colton O'Kane rushed for 104 yards and a touchdown. Pick 6 from Everett Oatman. This is a complete Kamei team. They look good.
They will. I'm not giving them the kiss of death. They will go deep. Let's just say that they have the defense to make a run, and offensively, they remind me a lot of the Lapway's team from last year, but I think they're a little more balanced, as Lapway was a little bit more one-dimensional, and everything kind of ran through their quarterback. Kamei they can tote the rock. They can throw it up the field. Their defense is stingy and gets takeaways. They're good in special teams. I mean, they're consistent there. They're not giving up big plays. You look at like all facets of the game. They play a complete game brand of football. Even in the 8-man ranks, I like the Cubs to win out, and I like them going deep in the playoffs.
So here's the scenario, and you can read my Bubble Watch bracket for more clarification, but there's right now, to me, 4 really good teams in the White Pine, right? Kamei, Prairie, Potlatch, and Clearwater Valley. Only 3 of those teams are guaranteed bids into the playoffs. And there's a really good chance that 4th team won't have a high enough max preps rating to get that at-large spot, because District 4 is especially strong, and District 5 has 2 really good teams. So you're looking at right now, if the playoffs were today, Clearwater Valley would be out of the playoffs. And that's a shame, because there's a team from District 3 that gets an auto bid in Rimrock that in my opinion, probably doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs. But anyways, auto bids are auto bids. So you're looking at now for Clearwater Valley. This is the most important stretch of the season for them. They play in Potlatch on Thursday night, and then they play Prairie the following Friday in Kuski. And this will kind of define their season. They control their own fate, but it is these next 2 weeks are really going to determine, I think,
I'm gonna probably take out what's left of your hair with this comment. Prairie's the team outside looking in.
I agree. They're banged up right now. They have some injury problems that they need to figure out.
I think Potlatch gets the second bid, and I think Clearwater Valley gets the third. I think Prairie's on the outside looking in. I really do.
And again, Prairie, remember, beat Potlatch earlier in the season in that wild back and forth game. I think 56-52 was the final. So Prairie already has the leg up on Potlatch. Like we could be looking at a 3-way tie possibly for like second through fourth place. And then what happens?
But you look at what Cami did to Prairie, and it's the saying goes like, don't let a team beat you twice. I mean, that Prairie's, they're hurting a little bit, and the Pirates, are a storied program for sure, but there's some bruises and bumps on that program right now, with just the lineup that they've got. I like Clearwater Valley as far as being a little bit more balanced. Potlatch is a dark. I think they're a force to be reckoned with. But yeah, it's gonna be. I think Potlatch gets the 2 seed. I really do.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And then the really big matchups for 1A D2 are still to come. It's all going to boil down to Timberline and Lewis County in the final week of the regular season, and Clark Fork and Wallace will play next week. And if the Wampus Cats win that game, then they pretty much have a playoff bid sewn up at that point. So
we saw the Sugar Beaters. Your Sugar Beaters from Montana ended up getting a big victory. So
yeah,
St. Regis.
we talked to Coach Stetson Spooner after the game, and he basically said, yeah, we got down 2 scores early and then traded scores with them back and forth. And we cut it to a 1 score. It was basically a 1 score game the rest of the way. And then with like a minute to go, Chinook scored again to win by the 2 touchdown margin. He said, basically, we start the game a little better. Maybe it ends up differently for us, but they were right in it. It just kind of a little bit of a slow start did them in, but
in 8-man football too. You can't be giving up 2 scores and expect to, it's a track meet on the grass. So,
right.
If you're trading punches in an 8-man game, you're going to have to either get a couple takeaways. Otherwise you're sunk. But yeah, I like, obviously Kendrick's getting the respect I think they deserve.
Yep.
They're complete and solid. I like Mullen St. Regis. I like Clark Fork. I think Clark Fork is a fun team. Just that they're finally getting their I don't want to say up, and they're like getting their due. They've been owed this for a while now. And the Wampus Cats are obviously, I love the mascot too. That's such an awesome mascot. But yeah, it's a program I think they're on the rise a little bit, and hopefully they can I would love to see them get a postseason win. I really would love to see that happen, but obviously the road's pretty difficult if they get in, based on kind of how the bracket might shake out. But yeah, it'll be a fun next couple weeks in 8-man football up north, especially in District 1. I think District 1, we know Kendrick is good in District 2. But do we know how good Mullen St. Regis and Clark Fork are against the rest of the state?
Well, I'll tell you that on that Bubble Watch post I did on the site, and again, you should really go check it out when you have time.
It's cool. I read some of it. I didn't get to go. I think D1 or D2 was the one I didn't get to really read the most. But it's also kind of the one I just kind of de facto go. Yeah, Kendrick's gonna go ahead and we can. I don't want to say write it in ink, but. Yeah.
So Kendrick and Mullen St. Regis would get buys as the conference champs. You would have the second place team, Clark Fork, would get a home playoff game. Now they would have to play the second place team from District 4, which could be Castleford, Camas County, Dietrich. It's no walk in the park. It's a home game, but it's, you're going to earn it. And then the second place team from District 2 also gets a home playoff game. So whether that's Timberline, whether that's Lewis County, they would host the second place team from District 3. Could be Horseshoe Bend, could be Garden Valley. That's an easier matchup to me. But how about this? Is the world upside down? All the teams from the north get home games in the first round of the playoffs.
That's finally, right? Finally, we can get some respect around here. But no, and the other, I think the kind of thing to keep an eye on too, and it's an outside, I don't know, like chasing a feather in the wind, but Clark Fork gets that home game. I'm gonna be a betting man and say that they play that game at Sandpoint. The X factor is Sandpoint's got field turf. So you're going to get a late season game, fast track. That could make things interesting as far as leveling the playing field a little bit, I think, in that ball game.
Yeah, that'd be fascinating too. Well,
just those little nuances in the game that make differences.
Yep, for sure. Well, we'll talk more about it as we get there. Clark Fork still got to beat Wallace next week to officially cinch that up. But wow, we're here. The postseason has arrived. We'll talk district soccer next week. We'll recap state golf, how our golfers from the north did, and talk more football as well.
Have we ever had a 4A title clinched in the first week of October
in soccer or
in football? I just don't. I mean, it seems so stinking early this year. I think on the obviously how early 0 week was, and this game shows up on the schedule, and it's like, boop, here it is. I mean, I don't know. To me, it feels super early to be playing this like de facto league championship game.
Oh yeah, for up north, yes, yeah, because when there's 3 teams, right? Basically, you get the 3 league games over the final 3 weeks. It just happens that this year.
Usually, you see it because of the 3-week cycle. It's like Sandpoint and Lakeland play on the tail end.
Right.
And this year, it's cycled to where they're on the front end, and then Moscow plays Sandpoint Lakeland going away. So, I mean, at Sandpoint losing that extra or that other game earlier in the year, Sandpoint's waiting a long time until they play a playoff game. So that's something that we can talk about later, but that's it makes it interesting. If they're hurting, they could get healthy before the stretch too for the Bulldogs. So that makes things really interesting. I don't think anybody wants to play them in the playoffs. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. Have fun at your game on Friday night, Sandpoint Lakeland on IdahoSports.com. Also on IdahoSports.com, we're going to have that Lewiston Post Falls battle. And in terms of game night on the Palouse, I'm trying to remember if this was the week we gave those guys off or if we had a game. You can always look at the full schedule of games we're going to be broadcasting by going to IdahoSports.com. And yeah, no game on the Palouse this week. We're giving those guys the week off. But 2 really good battles up north. Lewiston at Post Falls, Sandpoint at Lakeland. Totally free to watch on IdahoSports.com.
Video broadcast, by the way, might I add, for both of those games too. So you get to not only listen to the dulcet tones of our voices, but you get to see the action live.
Definitely. All right. Well, we'll get back at it again next week. But until then, enjoy the competition, everybody. For Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney, and we'll see you next time here on IdahoSports.com.